here we are. Welcome to the new backdrop. Today is another off the cuff, as I promised last week. I think this is probably just going to continue for the foreseeable future for a multitude of reasons. So when I sat down to finally look at today's information, I struggled momentarily and quite honestly have been dreading having to do this before I even read today's texts, just because of everything that's going on in our country and the way that Christianity is being framed, which if you've been watching for a while, you know that I just don't agree with any of the ways that it's being portrayed. So that was all kind of singing in the background as I opened today's texts. It is helpful, once again, to hold on to, and so I will reframe this probably through the end of our time together, through this preaching challenge at least, as a reminder that our goal, our purpose here throughout these 52 weeks plus a few extra special Sundays is very pinpointed to the following. What does Scripture tell us about God's view of women and humanity versus what certain branches of Christian religion continue to put out there? So in other words, the ways that texts have been twisted to allow dominance and power over women, over the poor, over the oppressed, over people who are other in any way, shape, or form, race, gender, economic status, etc. And to kind of untwist those texts a little bit and remind us who God is and how God intended things to be. I will let you extrapolate from there how the way we are living now, the way that things are being discussed and approached now, is or is not in line with that. So you take that for what you will. But today we're going to blur the Jeremiah and Matthew passages together because I want to talk about from them this idea of family and intention. So one of the common twists of Scripture is that women are meant to have children, and that is their primary goal. That's not what God says, nor is that what God is saying in this passage in Jeremiah, where it might feel like that's what God is saying, right? This call to women, or this edict, really, to women to bear children and to have set up marriages between sons and daughters so that those children may then have children. This is one of those texts of Jeremiah 29 that has been pulled and twisted, much like 29:11 has been pulled and twisted and misused. These verses of Jeremiah 29 are not saying, women, your role is to have children, period. What these texts are saying is, heads up, you are going to be in exile for a long time. The actions and the choices and the behaviors of those who were in leadership and then twisted a whole bunch of people into doing the same have resulted in this exile. God is very clear about that. So this is God's way of saying, you are going to be in this exile for a while, like long enough that women can have children, and then those children can have children. That's a long time. So this is to say, this is God saying to them, if you want to continue to grow your nation of people, don't wait to leave Babylon, because you're not leaving Babylon for a while. And some of you are never leaving Babylon because you will have died by the time you're returned, set free from exile. So this is not in any way a woman, this is your only job. This is simply a call to, hey, if we're going to keep this nation growing, we have to have children. Women are necessary for that. Yes? I will highlight, I don't normally branch off of our normal topic, but I will highlight that within today's passages, there is also the edict to the people. Settle in, make your homes, and protect the welfare of the people whose country you are in. Pray for the welfare of Babylon, because if you don't, if there is calamity, it will fall on you as well. Some of these passages are just reading a whole lot differently today than they did just a month ago, even, really. So fast forward then to this passage in Matthew where the mother of Jesus, right? Remember, we've talked weeks now about the fact that Mary's name is just erased. She is diminished to the mother of Jesus. Now, I can already immediately, I say diminished, and hear people say, she's the mother of Jesus. She's not diminished in any way, except that her identity as an autonomous person is erased when we take her name away. And so I challenge you, preachers especially, when you are reading these texts, put her name in there. The mother of Jesus, Mary. Mary, the mother of Jesus. However you want to do it, get her name in there, because she is an individual whose life was, her life trajectory as she assumed it was veered way off course and took so much courage and trust and hope and faith, deep, deep faith. So here in Matthew, Jesus is talking about the fact that good trees bear good fruit and bad trees bear bad fruit, and it's the fruit that tells us the nature of the tree, right? You can't look at a tree and say, well, that's a good tree, that's a bad tree, if there's not yet been fruit. That's important. That's important context, and something that also is twisted. So fast forward just a smidge in this text, and Jesus is kind of tapped on the shoulder and says, hey, your mom and your brothers, they're here. They have something to tell you. And Jesus responds with this, I would say, infamous, who is my mother, who is my brother? Jesus is not truly dismissing his mother and his brothers. What he's doing is saying, my family, my divine family, is much larger. But listen to that next line. It's the line that says, if they do not do what is in line with me, they are not my family. This is where other texts that say father will turn against son, and whatever the rest of that passage is. This is what he's talking about. I think to our context today, it's Christian will turn against Christian, because that word has taken on so many different meanings. I could go down that road. I'm not going to. The point is this. Mary had carried divinity within her. I think we can agree on that. Jesus has now grown. He has officially entered his season of ministry. I would argue that his divinity is slowly overtaking his humanity. Humanity is still there. Don't come at me about that. His humanity is still there, but I think his divinity is overtaking it. Meanwhile, she is a human mom to a human boy, and she is hearing the reports all around her of how her boy is being received, right? No matter how old, a parent is still a parent and a child is still a child in that relationship. So she sees her boy and hears these words that are being said about him, and I'm sure wrestles with her own understanding. Now, based on her history, based on how her message was received, how she received Gabriel's message and how she lived her life after that point, I think we can confidently say that Mary's faith sustained. I think that she simultaneously had to wrestle with, what is he going to have to endure? She knew his life was not going to be perfection on this side of heaven, anyway. He was going to have to endure trials, and she, as his mom, was going to have to watch. Motherhood, parenthood, is a different type of investment of love. Parents are not meant to endure the death of their children. And Mary grew and birthed and raised her child, I believe, highly suspecting, if not knowing, that she would, in fact, endure the death of her child in a very grotesque manner. She deserves to have her name spoken and read. We are not women, those of you who biologically or heart orientation, our worth is not limited to that of children. It is not. You can look back at all of the weeks that we've had to this point, and that is beyond evident. Do not take these passages from Jeremiah as some sort of conscription that is the highest level that you can attain, because it is not. This passage in Jeremiah, this is why context is so important, is simply saying, people, settle in. You will be in Babylon for at least a generation. So don't wait. Don't wait to have children until you get back home, because you're not going back home, some of you. In fact, most of you who are living in exile, who arrived in exile, will not be going home. That's the point there. Do not let the other voices diminish you to something else, because it's just not there. Again, also, Jesus is not dismissing his mother and his brothers. I think it's twofold. I think he is expanding his family. He's claiming his divinity and saying, my family is now not only Mary and my brothers. My family is now anybody who believes, who, if you connect the pieces of the puzzle of the story, who bear the good fruit, right? Those are my brothers and my sisters and my mothers. Wilcox points out he doesn't say father because God. He ascribes God as father. Again, God is not a gender. So, all of that to say, God does not limit us. God does not put us in boxes. God does not say disregard or ignore. God does say people make choices. There are consequences for choices. Some of those consequences are painful and don't make sense and make us question God's character a little bit. All of that is normal and okay. What God does not do is say, if you don't do this thing, in our case, women, if you don't have children, you are less than. That's not the message here at all. It also is not Jesus saying, just ignore your family. Expand your idea of family. That's what Jesus is saying. So that's where we are for this week. We'll see what next week brings. It's going to be a bit of a ride these next few weeks as I knock out some things that I need to do. But remember, no matter what other people say, no matter how other people are acting, siblings, we all are called. We all are called. We all need to use our voice. We all need to speak. And a big piece of it right now is speaking truth into who God is and wants us to be, not what is being portrayed. That's all. Remember to like and comment and share and subscribe. Subscribing is huge if you're willing to do that. But let's get the word out there. We all are working to find ways to fight. This is but one way that you can do that if you so choose. Be well. I will see you next week.